Welcome to the Hey Soul Sista podcast, where Mel Histon will guide you through life's big questions and bring you one step closer to doing this crazy journey as best you can.
Hey Soul Sisters, I am so excited today. I have one of my favourite humans as a special guest on Hey Soul Sista, and that is the fabulous Alexandra Joy. Hey AJ.
Hello my friend, it's good to see you, Mel.
Yay! Well, you know what? The reason why I asked AJ to come on today is because I wanted to talk about something, I guess, that has been going on for me and I feel like is relevant to a lot of you listening, a lot of Soul Sisters listening, and it's absolutely something that AJ has been going through. I would say mentors in, and that is the whole making the journey of going through changes and life transitions during this whole crazy journey of life. So that would be something.
Transitioning from one phase to another.
Yeah, absolutely. And so AJ, just quickly, I mean, you've been on Hey Soul Sista a number of times now, and I've known you for 20 odd years. How old am I? Actually 22, 23 years. So I know a lot about you, but just give everybody a bit of a quick of the lowdown of, what it is that you do now that you're in this transitional phase of your life.
Cool. So in this phase of my life, I'm part-time farmer or person that lives on the land, planting trees, regenerating a rainforest, creating a fruit forest as well, and plants that you can eat as well as plants that are good for the animals and the birds. And in the other part, I'm still halfway in my corporate world. So I kind of say I go from the bush to the boardroom and back and forth. In my corporate space, I am a coach, a mentor, a support person for people going through big growth expansions and transitions. Quite often that's people who are going from a manager to a leader kind of shift, or from a CEO, company owner, leader into more a spiritual shift, I would say, a life shift that happens when we've moved on in our career, done all that we want to do, and we're like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah, I love that. And that so resonates with me because that's totally where I'm at. Being in my late 40s. Okay, so when I say late 40s, I mean I'm 49 for another couple of months and then shifting into the big 50s. Yeah. And you're the same.
I am indeed. I have been embracing, look at this, the silver.
I'm not embracing the silver.
Really on its way.
Yeah, I'm not embracing the silver whatsoever. Yeah. And so, when I look at you, when I first met you some 23 years ago, you were very much, living the corporate world. I met you when we were working at John Hunter Hospital. AJ actually employed me for probably my first real corporate gig, working in the PR department at John Hunter Hospital. And it's interesting, when I look at you, then we worked together at WorkCover for a number of years, and you really progressed through WorkCover to end up becoming the director of communications for WorkCover. And then since then, you've just seriously, absolutely had a number of life changes. Do you want to just talk us a little bit about that? Because again, I see the real change and growth, but change in you over those 23 years. Talk a little bit about what has been going on for you during that time.
Gosh, that's huge. If I chunk it down to a couple of little changes, I think the first one would have been becoming a director. So moving from just being a manager to a leader of a bigger group where you don't have direct day-to-day contact with all your staff, where you have other people and layers of management doing that. So that was a big shift because it went from knowing everyone and everything and feeling like you had that direct relationship and more control, I guess, to learning to trust others and to create change and do projects through other people. So it was really learning to be more like a coach and someone who empowered leaders to do their stuff and what they did best, rather than thinking, I'm going to do it all myself. So that was quite a big shift. And then I would say leaving corporate life and starting a business was a big shift. And you go from this spot of working for someone else and having a big brand or company logo to then actually kind of trundling out your own wares and starting to go, I am the company now. And that's a big shift, because that's where it brings up all your stuff and where the imposter syndrome stuff really starts to come through. And then I would say the other shifts I've had have been more of a spiritual kind, have been awakenings that have happened. And I know we've talked about one of those that happened for me in India on a bit of a spiritual journey there. And then also I would say this shift, a tree change, moving from the beautiful beach of Merriweather to coming out to the countryside and living in a valley surrounded by mountains and living a mountain life has been another big shift in just brings up all sorts of challenges and makes you grow into a different person. And I remember when I first moved out here to the valley, the locals said to me, you'll either last a year or you'll last a lifetime, because they said the valley will chew you up and spit you out if you're not prepared for it. So it's always been a bit of that imposter syndrome and growth phases, I would say.
So what was it that made you decide to move out to, you moved essentially an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours away from your home in Newcastle, bought a farm, bought a property in a rural area, and, you've been there, 2 or 3 years now? 3 years? 4 years. Oh, my goodness. What was it that made you do that? Because do you know what? I think we hear all the time about wanting to make a sea change, want to make, a country or a tree change. What made you actually decide to want to do that?
Lots of things. Some of it was the passing of my mother, kind of realizing that life does go quick and that we should pursue things that enrich us and make us happy. My mum's stuff was family. Like, that was everything to her. And I started to reevaluate what's important to me, and nature and being in nature is one of those things. So I'm surrounded by nature, but it was also nervous system regulation. It was realizing that I have an appetite for adrenaline, and that I'd had some burnout and some adrenal fatigue and issues health-wise, because when I'm in the city and when I'm just doing corporate life, I can really easily get on the merry-go-round of that, on the treadmill. And I had learnt through yoga and doing yoga therapy and training in yoga that when I'm calm, when my nervous system is regulated, I perform at my best. I feel my best. I am the most content. Yeah. And I realized that a lot of what I was doing was just chasing stuff and running all the time, and it would fry my nervous system, and I might achieve something, but it didn't feel very fulfilling. And out here, I can mow a paddock and feel completely content and fulfilled. Like, it has changed my perspective.
So I guess you've talked about why it is that you decided to make that change. And for me, that's significant, because I think we all have dreams. I'd love to go and, have a total life change. Like, you've had an absolute total life change. And I think many of us dream of that and would love to do that, but you've actually done it. And it sounds wonderful. And I see your beautiful social media posts in the valley, your property on the valley where you live, and it all looks very whimsical and dreamy. But has it been easy? Like, getting real, have you had challenges that have come up?
Yeah. I mean, just this weekend just gone, I was meant to have an electrician come this week to wire up a shed I've built. And so I had to hand dig a trench because you couldn't get a machine in where it is. So Saturday and Sunday, 8 hours both day, I dug trenches until I had blisters. Yeah, 60 mil deep, hundreds of meters long, in the rain.
Yeah.
And then the electrician couldn't come because it was raining, and half of the trenches have collapsed. So, yeah, there are lots of challenges to living out here. It hasn't all been picturesque and rosy.
Oh, I was going to say, the other thing that I know that has been a shift for you is that you've very much gone on a journey of learning about our Australian Aboriginal culture. And you're not Aboriginal yourself, are you?
No, I'm not.
So what, and you've really, gone deep into the culture. What is it that prompted you to do that, and what have you learned from that?
So I guess I had friends at school who are Indigenous who are still friends today. And through them, I had involvement with their father and some of the elders back then. And throughout my business career, I had opportunity to have some exposure to those elders and their way of doing things, whether they were just coming for a welcome to country. When we worked at John Hunter, we built a facility called Yallowa Place and an accommodation facility. And I had lots of involvement with some elders then. And I loved their approach and their getting to know everyone and wanting to be connected and understanding how important community was. So I was always intrigued and loved that. But since moving here on the land, I'm really fortunate that I have maybe 40 artifacts that are actually here on the property that I'm custodian of. And I feel deeply responsible for making sure that those are maintained and taken care of in the right way. And so I wanted to find out more about how do I do that the right way and how do I protect them and preserve them. And through that process, got to meet a whole heap of elders and experience just their connection, their deep connection to the land, which 20 years ago I would never have understood. And I'm still learning that, but I walk country every day, every morning, and I'm getting more and more to understand that. But since then, I've explored lots of different avenues. I've been on walkabout in the Flinders Ranges with elders. And over the past 3.5 years, I've actually been going through my initiation with a group of elders who are from all over the country and have been really privileged to be initiated as a law woman. And I don't take that lightly because I am of white heritage, of European heritage. I was born here, but I really am deeply honoured that I've been allowed to go through the process of initiation with them. And I'm looking forward to a way that we can walk forward together, right way, all cultures coming together. And I think that's what the grandmothers and the elders that I sit with, that's what they see, is that they are only like 3 or 6% of the Australian population. And yet their ways of doing things are so rich that they know that they have to embrace others learning them in order for those things to continue to grow and have a legacy. So I'm not the only white woman that they've allowed to do that, and I respect deeply the teachings that they pass on and share that they're allowed to. Like, there are certain things that we can't be told or taught. But when it comes to transitions, they are so good at transitions compared to us, as in we do birth and the excitement over a new baby, say, really well, but we don't do death really well. We don't often do coming of age, as in menopause and experiencing our elderhood so well, but they do it really well because they have initiations and rituals and processes for each phase. And each phase of their journey is really honoured. Unlike us, where we kind of shove oldies in an old people's home or we consider people no longer of value, they have this beautiful way of honouring those transitions. Even separations, if a couple separate, they have a process and a ceremony for that. And so it's a celebration of what has been and also a transition. So I really have learned a lot from them as well about going through transition.
So it sounds like there's something we could all learn from that.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And wouldn't you like to think that maybe in the future that we'll reach a point where we actually all are connected in that way?
Well, and we already are. Our lens is a separated linear lens, whereas their lens is a connected holistic lens. So, and even some of their own mob, right, are disconnected from that too. So the more, through trauma and history and all sorts of things, the more we can all see that connection, I think the more we'll all transition and walk together right way. Yeah.
Let's get soulful on social media. Search the Sister Code Facebook page and follow us on Instagram.
So talking back on transitions and life transitions, and certainly I see that, like I was saying before, given that we're in our 40s, late 40s, very, very late 40s, and you touched on, through menopause. I am not menopausal. I would just like to say that. In saying that, though, I still see lots of changes going on in my life. And when I reflect, I really feel like this is a time of reflection, the age that I'm at. And I can see all these different phases of my life and life changes and challenges and things that have come up in transitions. And some of them have been career, as you touched on before. And I know that's something that you mentor and coach people in, is career changes. And then transitions from maybe having a career to having a business, which you've certainly done. And I know there's many a woman who would love to do that. There's also having the whole life change of where you're going to live and what that might look like. And the other change that you touched on is spiritual change, which again, I know certainly I have been going through that the last few years. It's like getting to that point of going, actually, how do I want my life to be? I'm actually really tired and exhausted with the craziness of life, of balancing family and career and what it is that I feel like the world wants from me and I'm meant to be doing, and actually trying to choose a more soulful spiritual path. There are so many challenges that I know changes that many of us would probably dream of making and would like to make. So my friend, I guess for you as a mentor and a coach and helping people with their life transitions and career transitions, how important is it for somebody to have a clear vision or goal of what it is that they want in terms of their life transitions?
Maybe 5 years ago, I would have said you had to have a goal. And now I say, not always, but it helps. Because life does seem to shift and change so much and so quickly that we don't want to hold hard and fast to something. But it is nice to have a bit of a, where am I going? And then celebrate the baby steps. Like, just zoom in and focus on the baby steps is what I would say. And so for me, what I've come to terms with is that our success in this transition, whatever the transition might be that you're going through, is like 20% the goal and strategy. So 20% having that clear vision, 20% strategy, and 80% of it, I would say, is mindset and energy.
Really?
So a whole lot more of it is about your mindset and the energetics of how you're preparing yourself for that transition.
Yeah. Do you know, I had Lisa Gill on Hey Soul Sista recently, and she was actually talking about mindset and the importance of mindset. And I absolutely agree. And on a basic level, it's okay, do I believe I can, or do I believe I can't? Do I believe the world supports me, or do I believe the world's against me? Yeah. So it's interesting that you talk about that, the importance of mindset.
Yeah, and I would say often when we're going through a transition, we start looking at, say it's someone who's working now and want to start their own business, that imposter syndrome stuff comes up. Or maybe you want to move to somewhere different and all the imposter stuff comes up, and you start thinking, can I dream of that? Do I deserve that? Who am I to think that? Can I, do that? And I would say, I think we've labeled it wrong by calling it imposter syndrome. And I think it's actually just expansion symptoms. And so when we're expanding and moving into something new, the energy is different, and it's just symptoms of that. And so if we start to break it down and start to look at, well, what are some of the small steps I could take towards that? And what are some of the ways I could get my nervous system used to that before I get there? So if I'm going to start a business, could I start talking about myself that way? Could I start putting some things up around the walls, or having little clues, or using a certain notebook, just starting to do things that are moving me that way so that my nervous system starts to get used to it and the expansion symptoms is not so big.
Are you big on vision boarding?
I used to be. I loved the whole getting magazines and that out, but I don't so much now. I do have, I'm more of an immersive person now. So like even before moving to the country, I did a lot of long country drives. I looked at lots of properties and would like visualize and imagine myself in it and feel like, does that feel right? So I probably go more by feelings now than the vision board, if that makes sense. So I notice more, does this make me feel calm? Do I feel alive? Do I feel at peace here? You know, like, do I feel safe? All of that is more what I go by now.
I was going to say, I was going to actually ask you, how do people actually maybe identify that it's time for them to make a change in their lives, and what steps do they do to actually make that happen? But I go, one of them, I guess, is feeling. It's actually immersing in feeling.
Yeah. Some of the symptoms or knowing that you're ready for the transition, I think that's kind of where you're going, is restlessness, you know, changing things all the time because you're like, is it this, is it that, blah, 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 you know, and you feel like you're everywhere and nowhere focused. And a big one I would say is also comparisonitis. If we're starting to scroll and look at other people's lives and go, oh, she's doing that now, or look at what that person's doing, as soon as we're starting to compare, then that's often a sign that we're ready to grow or change or something like that. And I would say, can you pull the attention back in on yourself and do a bit more of the work on yourself?
Do you know what? That's huge, the social media comparisonitis, absolutely. And it's interesting that you talked about the restlessness, because I think I would say I've spoken to many a woman who that's where she's at. She's at that point in her life where she's restless, or she starts searching for something and she doesn't even really know what that is. And so we'll start looking and start going, is it that I want to start my own business? Actually, I'm not really satisfied in my career. And it may not be going from a career to business, but it's like, this doesn't feel right for me anymore. Do you come across a lot of that with your coaching?
And it could be, heaps, whether it's in their career or even in their life. And it could be, I'm buying a lot of shoes and handbags lately. You know, I'm buying whatever the latest Amazon find is because I've been scrolling. And it's that kind of just trying to find something to appease that restlessness in the moment. And all we really need to do is just come back and ground ourselves and come back to having some compassion for, well, that's where I'm at. What it tends to show me, and I've been studying a lot of heart math research, is it's often our brain and our heart are incoherent, are out of alignment. And so our brain is looking for things to hook into, which is why we start comparing and scrolling, but it doesn't fulfill us at that soul level. So it's out of alignment with our heart. And so we want to start looking for more clues of, when do I feel like those things are in alignment? When do I feel coherent and calm and at peace and joyful, and lean into that stuff. Even if it's just a hobby or something that you love doing, lean into that stuff and start knowing that I'm ready for change. So my baseline might change, and starting to get yourself used to the new baseline rather than just doubting it. Go, what would it feel like to lean into that? Some of the ways I work on that with clients sometimes is to ask questions too, like to do some reflective journaling or self questions. So it could be, who would I be without self-doubt? Maybe journaling about that. Who would I be without self-doubt about this change? It could be, what's one feeling that I'd like to feel more and more often? And once you label that feeling and then go, well, where do I experience that feeling? How do I get more of that feeling? And then if you're scared of judgment of others, or you're doing too much of the comparison, like, who are you scared will judge you? Because quite often we're not prepared to try something different, put ourselves out, do something different to what our family do or friends, because we're worried about judgment. But who is it you're worried about judging you?
And how often
as well?
Yeah, how often do you hear people go, who does she think she is? I don't know why she's doing that.
Yeah.
And that can be huge for people to overcome. I know Oprah talks about that, which I love it. Whenever I see a little Instagram reel that comes up of Oprah talking about that, going, some people are not going to actually know or understand why you're doing that, and it brings up a lot of stuff for them. So they're going to default to, who does she think she is doing that? And that can be really hard, and it actually takes a lot of strength to be able to not let that pull you back or drag you back into a place where you don't want to be anymore. But I will say it's interesting. It's been one of my life lessons is to identify that and go, you know what, you've got to have really good soulful people around you that actually genuinely want to see you do well, no matter what that is.
Yeah. And that's just a sign that they're not in their sweet spot or flow either, if they're taking a moment to judge you, right? So, yeah, I think the more we can have courage to try little things and do little experiments, lean in. If you think, oh, I would like to live somewhere different or do something different, can you find a way to experiment with it and then notice how does it feel? What is it, how do I respond to that? Does it light me up actually? Because sometimes we don't know. And another thing I would say is if you can, which can be challenging, sometimes life throws stuff at us, but try not to stack too many transitions at once. So if you can help it,
how many of it?
To leave your marriage, change your career, location, like all of it at once. That's way too much.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for myself, I really need to sit with something for a while. I'll get a thought or an inkling that I'm like, I'm ready for a change, but I really have to sit with it for a while. And for me, it might even be 12 months. I have to sit there and kind of keep coming back to it and start talking about it. But then something will happen and I'll be like, right, now is the right time for me. And it's actually learning to go, actually, just because I have an idea right now, it's a little bit of the divine timing. I totally believe in that. And I'm like, yeah, do you know what? I'm not quite ready yet. And then something will happen. I'll be like, right, I'm ready. I'm ready to make that change.
Exactly. And I had a mentor once say to me, why the rush? Because I had a vision or a goal of something then and I was like, push, and it's not happening and I'm not getting there. And they were like, AJ, why the rush? And that's what I love about sitting with elders as well, is that they don't just look at your lifetime and what you're doing here, but they talk about 7 generations from now. And
wow.
So when you look at a timeline that long, hundreds of years, you kind of go, a bit of perspective, why the rush? But also I would say you're right. And most of the people I work with are people who are at the point where they're like, enough, or I'm completely ready, not where they're just having the inkling. And that, when you get the inkling, I think, is start experimenting and trying things out and just going, what would I be like if I was this? Yeah. But we do tend to eventually get to that spot where we go, it's now.
Yeah. Okay, my friend. So to finish up, and thank you, I love that you've shared all of this. You're one of the wisest women I know. Soul Sisters, if you're listening, you can totally reach out to AJ. What's the best way to contact you?
LinkedIn is probably my sweet
LinkedIn.
spot. Yeah.
You are really one of the wisest women I know. So just give us a couple of little tips for anyone who's starting to feel stuck or a bit hesitant to make change. What's just a couple of quick tips for those women?
I would just say the fear or uncertainty of change comes when we don't have enough information. So look for some of the gaps and start filling in some of the gaps. So if it's a change you want to make, even set a deadline for it. And I actually just worked with a CEO of a large company this morning and he wants to retire. Same thing. We just said, let's just set a deadline and then work backwards to go, what are all the loose ends and the incompletes that I would need to tie up in order for that to be a reality? So give yourself a deadline on an experiment or doing something. Start filling in some of the unknown gaps. Where else could I get knowledge like this? Who else has tried this? Who could I talk to? Those sorts of things are really helpful for starting to stretch and lean in. And also just having compassion for yourself along the way. We're all, like you always say, dear little humans trying to do our thing in this crazy world. So the more you can lighten up and laugh at it and just play with it as experiments. I'm going to try this different experiment this month, just play with it, lighten up, have fun with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, my friend. Thank you so much for coming and onto Hey Soul Sister again and sharing your wonderful advice. And do you know what? I'm all about doing whatever we can to give us joy. As Charlotte says, follow your bliss, what gives us joy, and live the best life we can. Because, I believe we're going to be here a number of times back and forth on earth, but for some people, they believe we're here once. So no matter what, just, make it the best that it can be for all of us. Yay. Thanks, Soul Sisters.
100%. Thank you. I'm sending you all a ton of love.
Want to save your soul? Review us on Apple Podcast. Thanks for listening to Hey Soul Sister with Mel Histon. What would help you on your crazy life journey? Email Melissa at thesistercode.com.